Now look, Terry's getting all
right,
tense.
now I'm getting, I was fine a minute till
It's not going
just
to be
now.
any different than what we were just sitting here doing. Hey, you know, and I was reading through your information. Ida was your
Yes,
grandmother?
ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Grandmother. Did you know her?
Yes.
You did? Tell me
yes.
about her.
She, hang on, can I start over? Or
Sure, no, there is no start, no stop, just talk. It's just talking.
Why does that thing change everything? I just go blank.
Yeah.
She was a very special lady.
Uh-huh.
I know that. And I think we were pretty close. I had a great deal of admiration for her. She was the only girl in a big family. Mm-hmm. And she took care of her brothers. She was kind of middle way in the pack. And I know she put one brother through school. And she was always kind of extremely thrifty. I remember a lot of things about her because I stayed with her a lot. But she was... two little things I remember. She would not use paper. She would use envelopes and use them up till. So she was little things, and she took such good care of everything she had. I mean, she didn't replace things. And I think I admired so much her ability to have dinner on the table, and it didn't matter who walked in. And there was always plenty of food, and we fed lots of people at noon, and there was always supper on the table at night. And everything that she did was always very special, but she was also a very, very strong lady in a lot of ways. I think it was a lot of it because of the way she grew up and the way she was, just the fact she had to work all the time. Up till she married my grandfather, and then she didn't, but she always did. And I got to tell a funny story about her. My dad inherited a life insurance business that my grandfather had started. My grandmother always did the grounds, and she always had a long sleeve denim jacket on, and she wore a bonnet type thing and white cotton gloves when she worked outside. And so she was working in the yard that day, and one of my dad's clients walked by and said, "Bob, can you not hire anybody other than an older lady to clean the yard up?" Or no, I think he said old woman, maybe, is how my daddy told the story. And he says, "That's my mother." And that was a picture I really admired. Loved to fish, which I never liked to fish, but because you had to sit still, and I was never invited to go. But she was really a great lady.
Now, I've read about your famous Italian cream cakes. Was that a recipe of hers? Or
No,
is this...
it wasn't. It was in the it's a Square House Museum recipe from Panhandle, Texas. That museum,
sure.
And they published a cookbook, and I've used that recipe, so I'm giving my trade secrets. So.
What were the circumstances of your great grandfather? Leaving the ranch to Ida, or putting her in charge. Was that unusual? Was that unusual at that time?
I don't really know that stuff, other than I think he divided pieces of it up, and maybe because she was the girl, she got the home place. We'll make that be right if that's not. I don't know. There's nobody here to tell us any different.
There you go. Did she have a great love of the land?
Oh, I think so, because she always had a garden. Always. I mean, when I was a little kid, we had a huge garden, and she loved flowers. Loved flowers, and she had a rose garden, and I wish I could remember the names of those other plants. You don't see them much. Spider, what were they called? Spider or something? I don't know. But really, like lilacs and the old things you don't. There's a big Vitex plant out there, but I remember we didn't have air conditioning at the big house in Caddo, and she would always have a great big vase full of flowers that sat on one table where it was a big hallway and the doors were always open. And I just remember lilacs was what I remember, because that whole house smelled like that. Or roses in this later on, I guess.
Oh, how wonderful.
She was really a neat lady. She really was.
Do you think what do you think was the most difficult part of her life as far as working the ranch and being involved with it?
That would probably be hard to say because she had not, I really wouldn't know what the most difficult part would be other than probably helping her mother raise and prepare food. And I mean, because her dad was a circuit judge. And I remember my grandmother telling us every Sunday they would have oodles of people out there for dinner. And I mean, they, you know, it wasn't, they had they raised pigs, and they even had a concrete hog wallah up there. So they always had, food preparation wasn't as easy as it is for us today by any manner of means. So I think those kind of things, there was a big family, and she probably helped my great-grandmother a lot more than probably the cattle part, but the gardens and chickens and all those kind of type things.
Okay, so I have to ask, what is a concrete hog wallah?
Well, I don't know, but it was built. It was concrete, and where they kept the pigs was up behind their house, and it was concrete, and I don't know what they did with it. But they had slats going down into it, and it was probably a foot deep. I guess they filled it with mud or
how interesting.
Water or whatever. It was pretty neat, though.
How interesting. So at this, when you said you would spend time with her then, were you living there then, or did you just go there and...
No, ma'am. She actually lived in the city after she married my grandfather, which she was up in her 30s when she married my grandfather, and he was considerably older.
Right.
And my grandfather was, I was either 2 or 4 when he passed away, so I don't remember much about him. But she lived in the city after she married him and never lived back at the ranch. But she would go down all the time, and then But I mean, even in the city, we spent a lot of time with her, so it was.
And when you say in the city, where are we referring to?
Oklahoma City. I'm sorry.
Not like like New York City.
No. If you're from Oklahoma, the city is Oklahoma City.
That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. So how far is Oklahoma City from the ranch headquarters?
About 160 miles is all. The old headquarters at Caddo. Now we have, the headquarters is at Waurika, which it's about 90 miles from the city to Waurika now. Okay. But that wasn't part of the ranch until 91, 92, somewhere in there.
Tell me a little bit of the history of the ranch. You don't have to do the whole, but just
what I can remember.
What you can remember.
This is the stories I've been told. Was started in 1868. That's kind of our starting date. But I'm not certain how or why that date became important. I know the government allocated 160 acres to all the Choctaw Indians, and so probably the first part of it was an allotment from the government to the Choctaw Nation, because we were in Blue County Indian Territory when it was started. I guess it would be great-grandfather buried at Boggy Depot, which was also Indian Territory at the time, just acquired more acreages, because I think a lot of the Choctaws would sell their allotments and move on. I don't know that for a fact, but they acquired, however, for whatever way, more land. And then in whatever 30s, I guess it was, when my grandmother married my grandfather, I think a lot of her brothers were in pretty tight financial situations. And my grandfather had been industrious enough that he had put some money away, and basically I think he bought out the rest of her brothers, and that's how the nucleus of the ranch was formed. And then my dad added to it in Caddo over the years. He had the acquisition of the ranch in Waurika, and then I've added to it as was pertinent at the time.
I thought it was real interesting when I was reading it. It just sort of helped put it in perspective for me that the ranch started, let's say in 1868, and it was just 3 years after the Lincoln assassination, which sort of put it in a historical time frame. And you all are the oldest family ranch in Oklahoma?
The oldest ranch in the state of Oklahoma under continuous family ownership.
Wow.
because there are a lot of places that are probably as old, but they've either changed hands or something. But we're probably right up there with. Someone had told me, and I can't remember who. I think it was the gentleman that was from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram.
Uh-huh.
He did some research, and there's something about old businesses in the United States, and he found the ranch under something like some of the oldest business,
Wow.
continued family-owned businesses.
Wow.
Which I thought was kind of interesting because I didn't know anything about that. But
That is interesting.
Yeah.
So in Texas, it would be sort of like the King Ranch. Is that a
probably
comparable?
I don't. Yeah, the Sixes started after us,
Okay.
but not too much longer. Pitchfork probably the same way,
Right.
but I know we're both. Like we're talking 4 or 5 years, not a
Right.
long time.
Right.
But they're both all of the same era.
So when you then were growing up, you lived in Oklahoma City?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then how much time did you spend at the ranch?
Every minute that I could. I would have walked if they would have let me leave. We had, my dad's father, as I said, passed away very early in his life. I think he was just 22, or right in there somewhere, 24 maybe. And he became responsible for the insurance company. And as I recollect, it was either us moving to the city or Dad commuting. And I think that at that time, my parents decided the best thing would be for all of us to move to the city, which is what we did. And it was fine. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just part of it.
But then you got out there all the time.
We went, like we spent most of the summers. We always spent in Caddo, and Daddy would go back and forth, and then weekends. And once I got out of high school, I am not even out. I mean, most weekends, once I got could legally drive, I left most weekends and went down there, and then after high school, I moved down there before I went to college.
And what's your first memory of being out there? Do you have one? First memory?
My first memory is not a good one. Yeah, I remember I had two things. And I have a story that's a whole lot different than everybody else's story. And I wasn't very old. But I think I got bucked off. My mother says I fell off, and I think she doesn't know the whole story. I'm convinced. But we were helping my dad one day, and somehow I ended up on the ground. For whatever reason. I like my story because it's a whole lot better. Except that I wouldn't get back on. And I was 3 or 4. I wasn't very old. And she took me to a stables in the city. It was north of the city, actually, to try to get me where I was comfortable around a horse again. And I think she regrets it to this day.
Because you haven't gotten off since
Exactly.
then, I don't think.
That was probably my first, I remember that like it happened yesterday.
Isn't that interesting?
And then I remember one day we were helping Dad, and we were in a pasture called the Buffalo, and we were down, I don't know, but I've always been really cold-natured, and it doesn't take me much to be freezing. I remember getting really, really, really cold, and Mama said, get off and walk. I won't ever do that again either because my feet hurt so bad. But I remember those two things, but those are probably my first memories.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
Other than pictures you've seen, but I
Yeah.
don't remember any of that.
Do you have brothers and sisters, Terry?
Yes.
Yeah. Are they ranch people?
No.
No, not at all. You're the only one who got the bug?
I think so.
Yeah.
Maybe they did, or they were always. They just, for whatever reason, they chose not to be involved.
And so, when did you first know? Do you think that this is where you'd spend your life? That's what you wanted to do?
Always,
Always.
but I was really encouraged not to.
Talk to me a
Very
little bit
much
about that and your relationship with your dad.
Daddy was just convinced that he was kind of the type dad, and maybe there were more of them at that point in time than not. But there were certain things it was okay for girls to do, but certain things not. Like he wouldn't let me rope, for instance, at all. I was not allowed to have a rope, and his reasoning was that he didn't want me to cut all my fingers off. So, that was probably okay. But we were also kind of allowed to help and be involved, but kind of not. I think if I'd been a boy, it'd been a lot different. He would have shared things and been more open about things, because I do remember lots of times I had a cousin that was a little bit older than I was, and there were things he would get to do that I wouldn't. And I know it was because I was a girl.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I have not a problem with it. Because I think in some respects it made me work harder at what I did do, because it wasn't okay to be good enough. You had to be better than.
Mm.
And I don't know how to explain that any other way than that way. It was, and he said, no, you don't need to be doing this. You know, you need to get a job someplace else. You don't need, you know, this isn't a, for what all of his reasons I don't really remember specifically. And circumstances a couple of times in my life kind of led me away. They really did. And there are certain things in life that you just have to do the best you can at the time, and it really, you have no choices. And so I tried other things. I really did. And it was never, it never felt right. It never felt good. And I was not going to do a bad job at whatever I did. It didn't matter that way. But I just thought if there was any way I could ever get back, that's where I would go.
You know, it's so interesting. When I, years and years ago, I was telling you, as a documentary filmmaker, and I got to this job by doing a film about cowgirls. And one of the women that I interviewed was Gretchen Samus. I don't know if you know Gretchen or not. She has the CS Ranch in Cimarron, New Mexico, and right there next to Linda Davis.
Okay, I know Linda.
Yeah. And so they're neighbors, and I remember visiting with Gretchen, and she's probably, I bet Gretchen's 80 years old now. But she told the same story. She said this family ranch, she loved it, and her parents were determined she was not going to work there. And they made her go to school, they made her go get her master's, they made her be a school teacher, and just every day her goal was to get back. Goal was to get back. So I guess there's something about it that just whatever the circumstance, that's what you have to do.
Sounds good to me. I don't know. It was what I was going to do. And I don't, I mean, I had every opportunity to go be or do other things, you know. And
how did at that time, Terry, when you were, you know, in your teens or going to college, how, I think we take it for granted a little bit more today, but how unusual was it for women to be working a ranch and to that extent?
Well, I don't know that it was unusual, because I think there were a lot of families that was okay.
Right.
Where I was, it probably wasn't that. I mean, I didn't know really anybody. And I was the only one in my class that went to Oklahoma State. I got a degree in animal science. I mean, I just didn't have any interest in doing what maybe others would have chosen for me to do. And so there weren't very many women at OSU at that time in animal science. More so than when Minnie Lou Bradley went, I will say that, but there were still not very many. I know I took a class which involved slaughtering animals. We called it Blood and Guts, but anyway, that was kind of the name.
Oh.
You may want to edit that.
No.
But anyway, we put up a steer, a pig, and a lamb, and like you would call the meat lab, and you would have an order, and we would actually process your order all the way to packaging it and delivering it. There was one. I was the only female in that class of mine at that time, and there were like 2 or 3 others. And then by the time I was a senior, there were probably a whole handful more. Today, I spoke at a orientation type class deal for animal science the other day. It's mostly women.
Get out of here.
Mostly women.
Is that true?
Very much so. Not going into ranching per se, but communications, just a whole different pre-vet. A lot of it is pre-vet now, because an animal science can encompass a pre-vet major, and so they take that route to get into vet school.
Huh.
the dogs and the cats, and that's what they're going to go work on, not so much horses or be a large animal vet. Or specifically horses in equine medicine that's very specialized. I found that absolutely unbelievable.
That's amazing. I wonder what caused the turnaround, do you think?
And urban backgrounds.
Urban backgrounds.
Not rural.
Really?
Not as much as you would think.
Why so, do you think?
That I don't really know. I don't really know, but that it has changed a lot.
Huh. It's funny because with the cattle raisers, we give scholarships. And one of the things that we've been looking at, and it's finding it harder and harder to even find scholarship recipients, is to get kids who are going into large animal. We being several veterinarians and myself and lots of people that are going to be affected by this have had this discussion. Lane Easter and David Hartman at Performance Equine are both A&M graduates. And even said, I think they even started a scholarship, or there is a scholarship, someone did, for only students that are willing to go back to rural areas and practice. I mean, we are so lucky. Dr. Clark is there in Waurika. We can't find anybody to come help him. I mean, he's got a huge practice. And this man works, I just don't know how he does what he does. Dogs, cats, the yearlings that come through Jefferson County, I mean, he processes a lot of them for a lot of these smaller operations. And it's too much work, I think. I hate to say that, but I think it's too much work. And somehow today, our society has trained a lot of kids that don't know how to work. This was another interesting comment when my son Clay went to Oklahoma State. We went through the freshman orientation. He was going to go into the College of Business, and we happened to walk by the College of Agriculture deal. And I happened to know the gentleman that was standing there, so he said, "Terry, come here. I introduced him to Clay, and he said, "What are you going to do?" And Clay said, "Oh, I probably go through business school." And he said, "Well, now we have a degree in the College of Agriculture, a business, ag business." And I said, "Oh, really? I didn't know that either." And he said, "I'll tell you one little thing. A lot of the businesses will come to the College of Agriculture first for one thing, because typically the kids in the College of Agriculture have come from a rural background, and they know how to work." Isn't that interesting?
Very interesting.
But you're right, it's a soapbox that I could get on and stay on about.
You and me both.
Oh.
We won't go there because that would take 2 hours.
So it's just. I just have to tell a quick story. We had a girl. We had a job position open, and the girl was graduating from college, and her mother called wanted to set up an interview. Now, would you hire somebody whose parent called to set up an interview?
No way.
It was just to me, just.
I understand.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So tell me what is, just so, again, this is a historical document, if nothing else, what is animal science? If you go to school and you have a degree in animal science, what does that mean exactly?
I took a production option, but there was a business option, a pre-vet option, and it just exposes you to pigs, sheep, cattle, horses, how to produce them, how to market them, the economics that drive all the factors of producing the feed that goes into them, and how you know what you're going to do with those afterwards, care for those animals, but a lot of the business side where you learn even to the point of, like I said, the meat part of all of them. I mean, you're required to know all the muscles, all the bones, just like med school, I guess, but with an animal. And then you dissect them, and then the next year you actually process them. We had reproduction, learning about all the facets of reproduction of all 3 species, or 4, because horses weren't, at Oklahoma State at that time, weren't always included in everything, but enough that you were exposed. There is nutrition, genetics, all the factors that would go into producing livestock and related, but then plus all your core classes that you have to take anyway.
Wow.
And there are just some deviations, like if you were a business major, you might, or ag business, or animal science business option, you might take accounting and business law, say, and if you were production, you might take some, I don't know what classes they would have today, but more production type classes. And so they kind of sent you to where you would get the most information about what you wanted to do. But I think it is a better degree today because they give you more opportunities to use your knowledge. I mean, even almost to the point that more hands-on situations, more internships, and which I think is really, really good.
So you then went on and got a degree, which it's something if I, were young and could go back and study again, I would love to go to TCU Ranch Management.
Phenomenal program.
So tell us a little bit about that. Talk to me about that.
Well, it was decided this was God's way of telling me this is how we're going to do this, because I had two little bitty kids, and their dad and I had been separated at the time, and I was working in a job with wonderful, wonderful people, but I was not happy where I was.
Were these your real estate years?
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
Okay.
I didn't know how much you knew about all that, but I was looking for anything, and I sold 3 horses very, very well, and ended up selling one more who ended up being the Superhorse, but I had pocketed me a little bit of money, and on a whim, and it literally was, I called TCU because I thought, no, there's no way I can get in this. I'm not really sure what I can do, but I think I've got enough money if I can figure out how to do it. And talked to Mr. Merrill, and didn't have an opening at that time or an interview time. I hung the phone up and went back to work. Got a call the next day. We've had a cancellation. Can you be here today?
Wow.
I went.
Wow.
It almost gives you goosebumps to hear the way this happened. And I had an interview with Mr. Merrill that day, and went home and got a letter in January that said I was accepted. And I don't really remember when it was. It was sometime before the first of the year. It wasn't very long. Well, I had one child I had to get in preschool and one that was going to kindergarten, and didn't have a house. I mean, had nothing. And found some people that wanted to rent a house in Dallas for a year, and had a place over here in Fort Worth. Same money, it paid my mortgage. I mean, I had a small mortgage payment I had to make, and the rent, I mean, it all dollared out. Had one opening in a kindergarten class here in Fort Worth, and my mother was gracious enough to help me afford that. And had one opening in the preschool program right across the street at TCU from the ranch management little bitty building at that point in time. And it was like, okay, well, and I didn't get the house deal till 2 days before I went. I mean, I was ready to drive. I mean, that's how all this, I mean, I just decided it was in God's hands, and if it was going to work out, it was going to work out. The boy's dad died in the interim. Mr. Merrill called me, says, how are you going to do this? I said, the same way I was going to do it before. It was going to work. He says, all right. And I know he was pretty skeptical about taking me. I don't think he was convinced I'm not sure. I mean, I had a big load.
Yeah.
And I think he knew that, and he wanted to make sure I knew that. And I said, no, I'm coming. And the rest is history.
That's amazing. Amazing.
We did it.
How long a program? Was it 2 years?
No, ma'am. It's just September through May.
Oh, okay.
But it's an incredible program, and you asked me a question, and I didn't even answer that. I just told you how I got in.
That's just what I wanted to hear.
Very intense. It's they put you in expose you to a lot of real working situations. I mean, when they teach genetics, they teach it with an application mode, not, okay, these are all A, B, B, C, C's. We're going to talk about what you're going to do with the AAs and the BBs, and how you're going to use them and what you're going to get when you get done. We got to see we take, I think it's 4 or 5 field trips, I can't really remember, but get to ask questions that you wouldn't get to ask in a normal situation probably, and you get to really quiz these people who are making a living doing this and what their problems are, and they're very honest and very open, and like, you know, we've done this, it didn't work, we tried this, and you get exposed to all that and the people you get to meet. But a lot's expected. I mean, in my class, I think we lost 4 or 5 people the first couple of weeks. It is, you make a commitment and you don't live up to that commitment, you're not there. There is no tolerance for mediocrity. You are going to achieve this goal, whatever it is that you set for yourself, but there are certain criteria that you are going to follow and you're going to adhere to, and something like it should be. I mean, it's a job,
right,
basically, and if you aren't there and you don't participate, you get fired, just like you would in the real world.
How many people in your class?
I think there were 30 or 32. 30.
30.
5 rows of 6. 30.
Wow.
So I think we scaled back fairly quickly.
How many ended up graduating? Do you remember?
No, ma'am,
Yeah.
I don't. I'm thinking 26, something like
Yeah.
that.
Were you one of the classes that, because I know several TCU ranch management classes went out to my father-in-law's, out to Lanham Riley's for
Yes,
course.
we
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
We did.
That's my father-in-law.
Yes,
Was my
we were.
father-in-law.
We sure did get
Yeah.
to go. Uh-huh.
He was one of those great real people
Very
that you
much
could
so.
talk
Yes.
to.
Yes, very much so. We did get to go. I was in one of those classes, fortunately. I got to go see a lot of places maybe they don't get to go to anymore.
Yeah.
And we got to walk uphill both ways in a little bitty building, and it was, it was, my kids even, and Clay is going to go this year, as a matter of fact, but there were 2 days I couldn't get help or anything else, and Mr. Merrill let them sit in a little waiting room, which wasn't very big, and they played on the floor, or I gave them something to do while I was in class, and so we were kind of kidding about that at the ceremony last fall. That, I mean, they've grown up and are big kids now, but do you remember? And they were always very, very good kids over there, but there were a lot of, it was kind of funny because I ran into another classmate, and he says, "How are the boys?" I mean, because they were all kind of part of the group,
Yeah.
and it was kind of neat.
Were there any other women in your class?
There was one,
There
Laurel
was.
McDowell from down around San Angelo. And I haven't talked to Laurel in a long time, but she was. There were 2 of us, so we got to share a room, and so we didn't have one extra oddball all the time. But it was fun. We had a good class.
Then now it'll be interesting to when in Clay's going next year.
Yes, ma'am.
How many women will be in his class? I wonder what the ratio is now.
I don't think it's much different.
It's not?
It doesn't look like it, because Texas South, in the Cattleman magazine, they always publish a picture, and it doesn't look like there's ever many more than 2 or 3, or not very many, I don't think.
And so what do you think was the most valuable thing you learned from that
Meeting Mr.
program?
Merrill.
Yeah.
No doubt. I mean, there's no question. He made so much difference in my life. He is pretty special to me. I will say that.
Well, he's also very proud of you. I
Well,
will say that.
He is. I just can't thank him enough. I will, and I tried. I said I probably will never be able to thank him for all he did for me.
Well, like I said, he's very, very, very proud of you. Very proud of you. So let's see. So then when you left TCU Ranch Management is when your father then asked you to come back to the ranch? Is
No,
that
not
right?
really.
Okay.
There was a little gap in there, and I did some consulting. In fact, what I had decided I was going to do, because I didn't have any help with the boys, so I was a little tied down as to how I was going to handle all that. And so I started taking rural appraisal courses, and I thought I would add that, and really wanted to do consulting and appraising. I thought that would be something I can have a fairly stable job, and I don't have crazy hours until the boys get to where, because they were just 3 and 5 right then. So I had to be kind of careful, I thought, how I was going to approach this. And so did that for a while. And my dad actually called me on some country that was available for sale. And he asked me to go look at it and see what I thought and what we could do. And that's kind of how that led back into that, because I really had decided I wasn't going to go back to work for him at that time.
Yeah.
And that was a good decision at the time.
So what caused the turnaround?
He needed me really bad.
Isn't that nice to hear?
He didn't want to put it quite in that way, but he did very, very bad. And I think both of us kind of decided it would work to our advantage. And I told him, I said, if you hire me, I said, if I don't succeed doing what I tell you I'm going to do, I'm not going to stay. And I basically told him that. I said, you're going to pay me to do this, and if I don't get it done, I'm leaving.
How was the working relationship?
Mostly really good. Mostly really good. And it was probably better in some respects after I'd gone through school. There were a few little things that we encountered that were pretty rocky. I think any family operations, as much as you try to be objective and businesslike, you have an emotional attachment that will never go away, especially when it's your daddy. And I was always crazy about my dad. I think he was always the devil's advocate, and I maybe always felt like I could never do anything good enough to do it. But I don't think that's after he's been gone. I think he was always very, he just always, I don't know how to put this really. I think he was always very proud of me, but it was, he wasn't going to ever let me know. Does that sound all right? But I talked to my stepmother yesterday, and the Journal Record in Oklahoma City just did a big article, and I'm on the front page, horseback, and it says, Forst saddles up to lead cattlemen or something like this. And Jana had sent this to Esperanza. She says, your daddy would be so proud of you, which that means a lot.
Sure.
And I know he would. I think I probably did it in some respects because I think he would have encouraged me to do it. So anyway, it's okay.
It's interesting that generation of parent, and I've seen a lot of it, that similarity with the relationship that Kelly had with his father, and coming to terms with that. And they weren't this new group of people who were calling you on your cell phone. They were calling their kids on their cell phone every minute and telling them that they love them, No,
I don't. And I know my dad did, but it wasn't very often. You were better off with my dad if he didn't say anything. But he had a glare that you could see from here to, I don't care where you were. You didn't have to be in eye distance, and you knew when you were in trouble, big time. So I tried not to get there.
I bet you weren't there very often.
But Daddy said he didn't have to hit me very often, but he would. It was the glare.
Yeah, the glare's worse.
Glare was lots worse.
The glare is lots worse.
If you've never been around somebody with a glare, then you have no idea.
Yeah.
You can see it across the pasture.
So do you have the glare with yours?
I think so.
You do?
I think so, because it's like, I'm not saying anything, but you know better.
So when you went back, Terry, and started working with your dad, how long did it, let me see if I know how to make this, if I know how to say this. Did you, because I'm so fascinated and impressed, as everybody is, with how you've turned that business around. I mean, how long did it take you to create that plan? I mean, did it grow, or did you just pretty much walk in day one and go?
I pretty much walked in because I did the plan for the ranch while I was at TCU.
Okay.
We have to do a management plan.
Uh-huh.
You are required to take an actual operation and do a plan for it.
Wow, okay.
Well, that was my opportunity.
Yeah.
I got two things done with one deal. I turned in a management plan, and I worked it to a great degree. Mm-hmm. But it was my roadmap.
Mm-hmm. And did you did it focus primarily on the cattle business?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Almost
and then the horse
in the
business
range.
came?
The horse business it was doing all right for what my dad wanted.
Right.
It was not really any need of any strategic plan at that point in time. And yes, we did use the horses, you know, and I mean, they were a tool, and we had them. But as far as he had other situations that had to be dealt with far greater than the horses. So the horses kind of went to the back burner. And we had enough sales and enough to keep everything kind of going that it was not that critical. But his cattle deal was, and range problems were big. And so we tackled that first. And it took a while. And we had probably, at that time, to really get things in order, it probably took me 4 years to get the cows in the herd, down to a 60-day calving season, twice a year. Because we didn't go at it with just, okay, you're not doing this, and so you're out of here. We had to do it in an economic fashion, where we just arbitrarily decided on X day, and any cow that was going to calve prior to that went in this herd, and any cow after that, well, we're going to miss a few days. So we had a lot of shuffling around to do, and it probably took us 4 years to really get tight, and we got both herds into a 60-day calving season, which my dad probably said would never work, and we did it. And we identified cows that were not doing their job, and we stressed a lot of efficiency. And it took us, you know, we had to pay attention, and the range problems were evident, and we incorporated a rotational grazing program that he had tried, but a lot of people that started when the rotational grazing started had the misconception of basically taking everything before they moved on. Everything being about looked like this carpet. And that wasn't the way it was, the interpretation of a lot of people, but it wasn't the correct interpretation. So we had to resolve some of those issues. Our pastures were in pretty bad shape. He had some health problems with the cattle that we had to address. So we had a big road in front of us, but I had a really good team of people to help me, and we got it done.
Did you make any mistakes?
Oh, sure. We always make mistakes. I still make mistakes. I think all you do is hopefully you don't make the same ones, but if you're going to try anything, if you're going to step out there, you're going to make a mistake. It's a calculated one, hopefully, but then you just address it, adapt, and go on.
You know, it was because I've had the opportunity to go there, and when I went to the Nobel Foundation, it was one of the most eye-opening experiences of my entire life. I mean, I just wasn't prepared for what they do there in the operation. But I went up to visit with Rusty, and I'm in such awe of them and the scientific work that they're doing. So I was really fascinated when reading some of your material, your relationship with them, and really how scientific your work is. I mean, it is not just, I'm going to go plant some seeds. I mean, it is real science.
I think it's the degree to how much you can put into it. I mean, and like our work with the Nobel Foundation, we started when the Nobel Foundation was not in a room about not much bigger than this.
Wow. Wow.
And they really helped keep me on track. And also there were some gentlemen, Keith Lusby, who was at Oklahoma State for quite a few years, ended up being the head of the Animal Science Department in Arkansas. But I had some real contacts that I called, and I bugged them a lot. And I had and you talked about making mistakes. I tried not to, because I tried to ask all the questions I could think of. Just, okay, why should this work? Why shouldn't it work? If we do this, what's going to happen? And tried to prepare ourselves for anything that was not going to be, that we could make a mistake in, I guess is a better way to phrase it. But you know, the people that have, and Mr. Merrill as far as range, I mean, and the Nobel Foundation at that time, and to this day, I don't know that many of them over there, their focus has changed just a little bit as time goes on, which I actually called them 2 days ago as soon as I said that. But they provided me kind of a sounding board, and they provided information because, like you said, the scientific research they do, just the different little trials. Well, you can see if that will work in a larger scale, and they show you different things that you can try. And no, they're not going to be for everybody, but there are ways that you can adapt them to your organization, and especially like their trials on seeds, and they're doing some byproduct trials now on feed, because that's going to be a big issue for all of us this next year. I had dinner yesterday with a gentleman from Alabama who's got country over just south of us. Eric runs a lot of yearlings, and we've been talking about how we're going to feed, and you know, we've kind of joked, but now it's not such a joke. Wheat pasture at $100 an acre might be cheaper than cake right now. 38% cake is trading at $346 a ton. That's way over, about $140 over what we contracted it for last year. There's some real dynamics affecting our industry. $8 corn is probably going to be a reality here in another day or two. Lots of things that are, and so the Nobel Foundation will play a very integral part in, they can run trials that we can't afford to do. Will distillers' grain work? I don't know, but they can find out what it does in this scenario, and so you can look at their information. They're trying 4 or 5 different byproducts. Well, then you've got to worry about how to get it to your house and how the freight. I mean, there's so many other factors, but they can do a lot of the research that can give you answers to see, well, okay, maybe if it gets this kind of gain, maybe I should try it. So they are phenomenal, and we are so lucky to have them in the state of Oklahoma and North Texas. It is a treasure.
It is a treasure. You're absolutely right. It's really remarkable.
Very, and I mean what they've and where they have. I've seen where they've come, at least in the agriculture part, to where they are. And their focus now is probably on smaller producers. People, and that's a good thing, because probably the larger producers don't need what they have to offer as much. And I think it's probably going to be tougher for some of the smaller producers to weather a lot of this. So it's really great.
I was just sitting here listening to you, and I was thinking, it's just I can't imagine another business where you have so many outside influences that affect your business. I mean, the world economy, fuel, weather. Yeah, I mean, and I was thinking of all of these. You just always think of weather being the one, but it's probably amongst the least of them in today's.
Probably with just as well. Weather is dictating a lot of the corn right now, because there are a lot of guys up there that have had to plant 3 times. I think I read this morning that there's 4 million acres that have not been planted. Wow. And I know that sounds. I think if I recollect right, 83 million acres had been planted, and there are 4 that haven't. But they needed like 92 million acres to meet the ethanol mandate plus the feed mandate, and that's not going to happen. So, and the government's intervention, which is a whole, I could get on that soapbox, which is unbelievable, but it's one of those things. And, you know, the ethanol situation has created a problem for a lot of people. It's made food prices higher.
Sure.
I mean, it's affecting everyone, I think, and this isn't a political conversation, but I made the comment to a gentleman the other day that agriculture is such a small percentage, and he took me wrong thinking that everybody was getting older. That's not it. It's just, it's a small percentage of the population, whether young, old, or in between. I think we're less than 2%. Well, that's not a very big voice, but we provide everything that everybody in this country eats. I mean, that's a remarkable job, in my opinion, to be able to do that. So, but I do think that there's a tremendous part of the population. I heard a story one time about a gentleman that had attended school in California, at a University of California, went to work in the Texas Panhandle, and the secretary in the car that day happened to be a friend of mine. That's how I heard the story. They were driving somewhere, and this guy, who's very well educated, political science major, somebody commented about the wheat. I said, gosh, the wheat crop looks good. And he says, wheat, what do they use that stuff for anyway? Boy, that I've never forgotten that. That hit home with me. I'm thinking, Texas Panhandle. You've lived there for a year or however long he lived there, long enough to know what wheat was. Had no earthly idea what they even used it for or what it was used for.
That's so scary.
Very scary.
That's so
very scary. And don't care.
No,
as long as that bread is in the grocery store or they can get their McDonald's hamburger, who cares?
They don't care. They don't care. So what, Terry? I mean, what is the future for agriculture? I mean, how do you continue to exist in this world that's allowing it
business
to dwindle?
As usual is not business as usual.
Yeah.
We've already made. I don't know that answer. I really don't. We have ideas about how we're going to survive. We do business with a lot of other family operations, and I've actually talked with all of them. Mike Briggs, who I said that was my friend, they've got a family feedlot in Nebraska. Mark Gardner Angus in Ashland, we buy our bulls from them. Eric Story, who is from Alabama, family operation. We talked yesterday about doing some things. Ron Lane, who runs the Pitchfork Ranch, we've talked about some things. I think all of us are sharing ideas about how we are going to be viable in the next century. I mean, maybe we should just shoot for the next 10 years. We are going to have to, I mean, just like now we're looking at different feeding operations. I will say, for instance, I've never considered a liquid feed because I didn't really like a lot of things about it. We're looking at it. We're looking at things that 10 years ago I would have said, no, we don't use that, probably never will. Did say probably because I don't know. 6 months ago, made the comment probably that we wouldn't plant. I mean, I don't know that we could afford to plant $100 wheat. We may not be able not to. I mean, might be we turn our cows out on that wheat pasture because it's cheaper to feed them that way or less expensive. I don't have all the answers right now, but I will tell you this. We're asking a lot of questions and trying to form ways that we can survive.
Do you get discouraged? No.
Just it's an opportunity to do something else. Oh, and I discouraged is probably I mean, you get frustrated, I think, sometimes more than discouraged because so many things are out of your control. But you got to adapt. I mean, that's part of our business. They are going to be there. The Commodities Board has been playing havoc with us the last week. It was 10 days ago that October feeder board was up at $1.17. Today, when I left, or yesterday, it was down to $1.13. I mean, and corn's shot up to $8. Wheat's been up all week. I mean, you're talking day to day. Your calves were worth, let's just use the October board, $1.17, and today they're worth $1.13 according to the Commodity Board. And that runs our business now a whole lot more than it did a few years ago. So it's speculators in New York City probably that are driving that board like this, and other things. I mean, the corn market's driving it right now, definitely. But fertilizer, a cost that we didn't fertilize very much, but we've got to fertilize our wheat. And our anhydrous, I know, was somewhere in the neighborhood of $700. And they won't. It's trying to get it contracted is very difficult because I think the suppliers don't know what they're going to have to pay for it. So a lot of the ways that we've contracted in the past, we've locked in our prices, we've had those kind of luxuries the last 2 years. It's kind of difficult to do that. I'm not saying we haven't, but it's a little more difficult to do that. So you've just got to sharpen your pencil and figure out how to do a better job.
So then about that weather thing.
There's yes,
that
weather thing. It's always there, always will be, and I think we always plan for a drought because that's the kind of country we've always lived in. More rain is usually a luxury. Although last year we had more rain than anybody could ever even imagine. I think we had 25 inches in the month of June. In fact, opened the floodgates at Waurika Lake. Never had opened them before. Didn't know where the water was going to go. But the dam was in jeopardy, so they had to do it. And sandbagged all town, and it's because it sits really low, but it went the right direction and flooded some country out west. But it's we had a lot of water. It played a role in the grass quality. We had lots and lots and lots of grass. The quality was below normal, very below. Some grass that was tested had less than 1% protein in it, which is very unusual going into winter. Played a whole difference in how you fed your cows that winter. And so too much rain was sometimes as bad as not enough. When it quit raining, it quit. We didn't have any wheat pasture till March. So we had probably the most expensive wheat pasture we had ever put in. And where we had 2,000 yearlings last year, we had 200. And had them stockpiled on grass. And then we had a big fire in January that was set. And our wheat fields became expensive fire guards, but they saved our country.
Wow.
We only had about 4,500 acres burned, and had we not had the wheat fields where they were, it'd gone to the river. And that's 25 miles.
And the fire was set?
Yes. It was set at midnight one night with a south wind, about 20 miles an hour. And we had it out by 2 o'clock. And the wind changed about 10 o'clock. It actually started back up again about 7. We got it out, started out up again. Wind was blowing pretty hard, and we never left it, but we thought we had it under control. About 10 o'clock, the wind shifted from the north. It was hit going 65 miles an hour, and it was gone. So, but we live in the greatest county in the world. We had 16 volunteer fire departments out there that day. I do not know how many trucks, because several people had 2 or 3 trucks. We had 3 tanker trucks from volunteer fire departments, and one gentleman that hauls oil field water back and forth. I don't know how many individual rigs we had, 11 or 12, I think. But it was unbelievable the help we had. And you couldn't fight it. You just contained it. We had 3 maintainers out there and just worked to kind of keep it from getting any worse than what it did.
Wow. How scary.
Expensive fire guards. It paid off
Very
that year.
expensive.
I said, see, that's a silver lining.
You are good at those silver linings. What's your worst weather memory?
Probably my worst weather memory would involve cold. I think Caddo, there were 2 winters back to back that we were out of, we lost electricity for well over 2 weeks, and the temperature never got above freezing. So water situations were tough, and trying to keep everything watered, and hauling feed and hay, and that's about all we did all day, every day. And it was a while. And then when it finally started thawing, our pipes aren't obviously very deep, so everything broke. So that was probably the toughest ones.
And now how does you, who said earlier that you don't like cold, now how do you get up every day in that kind of temperature and do that?
Cabela's should hire me, I promise. If it says new and improved, or we'll go to sub-zero, I try it, I think. But you just do. Yeah. I said, every year, I said, okay, I'm going to try this year. Maybe I'll stay warm. But I'm always glad to see the scissor tails come in and the red buds bloom. I always am. But
do you take vacations?
Vacations.
Now let's spell it.
And that would mean?
That would mean where you, get in a plane and go to a beach.
No, because I don't enjoy doing that stuff.
Not at all. You don't do vacations at all.
No, I'd rather be home. And we get to show horses. And so going to Reno every year. I mean, that's not anywhere close to a vacation. I understand that because it is work. But, you get to see a different part of the world, and you get to be with the people you enjoy being with. And I don't like water, and I don't like beaches, and getting sand all over me has no appeal to me whatsoever. So, therefore, and skiing is out, because I tried that one time. My sister lived in Montana, and my mother decided we were going to all go up and visit her for Christmas one year. This is a long time ago. Kids were little. And I said, I can stay at home and be this cold. I mean, it's like, why am I going up here? It was nice, but One thing I do want to do someday.
What's that?
I probably don't know if I would like it when I did, because I've had several people tell me I probably wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
I've always wanted to fly fish, and I don't like to fish
Mm-hmm.
because you have to sit still.
Mm-hmm.
And I have horrible memories of going with my dad to fish and him sending me back to the house because I wouldn't sit still long enough, and I'd get the fish all. And I'd take the dogs, and, he didn't get to fish very good. But I think I would like to do that, at least try, because it's always, the pictures you see, it's always so pretty where they're doing that. And I've met a lady that her husband is an outfitter in one of the wildernesses in Idaho, and she asked me to come up. And my sister lives in Oregon, and she's asked me if I would just go. I probably have several places to go. It's just I don't go well. I always have a good time once I get somewhere, but I just have a hard time making myself do that.
And once you get there, are you ready to go home?
Pretty fast. I'm okay, but I'm not a long timer. I mean, I could do something for a couple of days, but I've had enough usually after that.
So tell me about the horse business.
Right now, it's pretty exciting, I think. We have,
guess.
We have a stallion, I think, that is going to make his mark on the industry, the cow horse industry, and several other places as well. And our 2-year-olds this year are probably our first big colt crop to be real competitive. And I'm just real excited. I think another political issue, I think a lot of things have happened that have caused the demise, for lack of a better word, of like the middle horses on down. I mean, I think they're turning out a lot of them, and I think there's a lot of neglect going on. I think there are places people take horses to the sale and owe the sales company when they get done. But the higher end horses, the horses that you can be competitive on and will go do a job, they're holding their own. There are a lot, and I think in the next couple of years you can probably buy a lot of really good horses for a good price, not without having to pay the top dollar for them that you might today even. The purses in all the competitive events here at Fort Worth in the NCHA Futurity, Reno, the Snaffle Bit Futurity, the Reining Derby or Futurity in Oklahoma City, the Derbies are big. I show mostly reined cow horses, so that's my I'm not going to try that word. Familiarity, I was going to try, but I don't think I can get it out. The Derbies will start in Paso Robles this next week, and I've got a new horse, and I'm so excited. I actually have a mare that has won quite a bit that I'm going to get to show the next couple of years.
Oh, that's great.
Non-pro bridle horse.
Oh, that's great.
So I'm pumped. And my mare, I have to brag just a little bit. I said, this was a huge honor, but I won the Reserve World Champion non-pro bridle in February on a mare that I've trained, and I did the whole deal on a lot of. She was just an ex-rope horse, so she wasn't even a cow horse. So I was really excited.
Wow.
I'm real proud of her. But I have a mare that's a legitimate cow horse for the next year, so it's fun and it promotes our business. But it also it is a challenge to train the horses and get them shown. And the cow horse people are just the neatest people in the world, and I have so many dear friends. And went to the Wendy Ryan roping this year. So we do a lot of things that are just fun. So that answers your vacation.
Okay.
How about that?
Okay. But I think you're being a little modest here too, because I mean it's just not that you're just out just training some horses. I mean, best of the Remuda winner once or twice?
No, just once. It's only a one-time.
Oh, it's only a one-time deal. Okay.
And we were the 4th ranch to win it, I believe.
And tell us what that means exactly.
At that time, the American Quarter Horse Association, and in conjunction with the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, devised an award. And I don't know how long it was a double award. A few years after we were awarded it to Barbies and maybe Browns, and then the AQHA just took it over. But they wanted to recognize the ranches that had working horses, that were still using their horses as a tool every day, and they were doing a job on. And our horses are used, if we didn't have that horse, we would have to have something, be it a four-wheeler, pickup, whatever. But they are used every day. And I think those organizations wanted to recognize the ranches that contributed to that part of our industry, where the horses were a very integral part, both from a marketing perspective and from a working perspective. And so it was a phenomenal award, and we were so honored to get it. I mean, it's to me, it's extremely prestigious. It just, and to be with the ranches that have won it and to be part of that group, wow. We're very honored.
So then what is, I read, what is the Superhorse Award?
It is, the American Quarter Horse Association has a World Championship show held in Oklahoma City in November. And the horses have to qualify to get there. The AQHA publishes a list with points on it. And that means from August 1st of the one year to July 31st of the next year, those horses have to earn enough points by July 31st of this year, say 2008, to have met that requirement in order to be eligible for the World Show. So you have to go to shows and earn these points, of which they've got points given for a certain number. If every 5 horses you beat up to, they've got a criteria that allows you to have points. Okay. Well, we qualified our stallion Real Gun for that award. You have to be qualified in minimum of 3 events in 2 categories, I believe. Or I'm not sure if that's right or not, but you have to be qualified in a minimum of 3 events. And we qualified him in the senior heading, senior heeling, senior calf roping, and senior working cow horse. And at the show only, the horses there's a prelim, and then they have to make it back to the finals. The finals placings determine which horse out of the number that have been designated eligible for the Superhorse. Their final placings determine who wins the Superhorse. And it's usually determined Saturday night by the time everybody's finished, because there's always one, the junior team roping is the last to go on Saturday. And so there's always some kind of a down to the wire deal. But that's how that's determined. And it's a very big award.
Yeah, exactly. Do you ride every day?
Yes, ma'am.
You do?
Maybe very seldom, not every day, but usually we'll do something. We breed Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We stand our stallion and have so I pin the mare's horse back, and after we get done breeding, I'll ride my show horses. Or I don't always help Bob Benton, our cow boss, that much anymore, but there's always something to do. I've got some heifers over on our side that we work our horses on that I have to check. And generally, you've got to saddle a horse for something every day.
Has there ever been a day that you've woken up and said, "Oh, I just don't want to do that today"?
Oh, I'm sure. I won't argue. I mean, oh God, yeah. But they're not that often. Sometimes you get tired. We had a year that we had some problems in the breeding barn, and we solved them very quickly, knew what it was, but it involved me being up virtually all night for about 2 weeks. And, little things like that. Yeah, I will kid you not, you get tired. But it's kind of, those are special occasions. It's not always happening. Invariably, in our business, something happens on Sunday afternoon or 2 o'clock in the morning, or when there's no, or when you're supposed to be someplace at 1 o'clock and at 10:30 you're trying to leave and something goes absolutely haywire, and it's just the way it is.
But given that, do you have what you consider a work day? I mean, do you say, well, I'm going, okay, and what is that?
It depends.
Yeah.
Depends on what day of the week it is. But we usually have, if Bob needs help, I'll know that in advance.
Right.
And we'll trot to headquarters or wherever we're going to meet Bob and go there. Our works are scheduled a year in advance because we get a day crew in, so we know the weeks that we're going to brand, we know the weeks we're going to ship. And so those are all day. If it's a day that is not scheduled per se, which I don't know. I mean, I've always got the horses to work that I will do that. But there's, and the hardest part for me is to schedule office time. Probably. In the summers, I try to do it in the afternoons when it's pretty hot, and in the winters, I try to do it in the morning before it gets so it can warm up just a little bit. But there's always something to do. I mean, and I try to make myself a pretty detailed list about what I need to get accomplished that week, and try to make myself a list that I look at about what I need to do that day.
Okay, so I'm letting go of that vacation thing. I'm going to try it. Do you work 7 days a week? You do?
I do go to church on Sundays.
Okay.
But that's probably the only thing I try to make sure I get to. But I don't really see it as being working 7 days a week, and I have a hard time with that because I really am very lucky. I get paid to do something that I love, and there's always something to do, and so you could work yourself very easily. But we're having a cookout, for instance, tomorrow. One of our headquarters, the camp man at headquarters, decided he wanted to have a fish fry and calf fry on Saturday, June 14th. Somehow now, I have inherited being the orchestrator of this because I'm getting all these calls. What are we bringing? What are we bringing? Hold on, y'all. It's Jackie's idea. But we're going to work horses in the morning, and I think Jackie's going to trim a few. And I've got some friends of mine who I show rope horses with. Steve's got going to the paint world, and he needed some fresh steers, of which we had. So bring your horses down. We'll work them. So we're going to have a cookout / work day tomorrow. So see, we do have fun.
I think it's so I'm so in awe of that. I mean, it's just I wonder where else, in America that sort of community exists anymore.
I don't know, and it's a little bit. One thing that kind of has bothered me a lot. Somehow, if we don't start our kids in this business and teach them how to do things, horseback, or there's so many things that will be lost. But the insurance companies today make it a little bit difficult because of liability situations. And, it's becoming harder and harder to get the kids involved because the insurance company says, you can't take the kids out there. Little things like that. So you say, it's here you want to develop it straight, the family. I mean, our families are involved in everything, all the families that live on the ranch, and we encourage that. But it may become increasingly difficult for all of us, and I've talked to other ranches about it, and it's something that is there, and I'll just leave it at that.
That is so unfortunate. So unfortunate. So now, let's see, your boys are how old now?
20 and 22.
Oh, my goodness.
Both work for the ranch, have always.
Really?
Changed the capacity in which they work. I guess they've cleaned stalls on Sundays ever since and fed. That was their job. They were responsible for the weekends and Sundays specifically. Whenever I needed anything extra, it was, Robert Clay, you go do this. They're working for Bob Benton, our cow boss, this summer, and I see him pull out every morning about 5 o'clock with truck and trailer and horseback headed out. They had a little time this afternoon. I think they were going to kind of get ready for actually I'm a day ahead of myself. Saturday is when we're having the cookout. I apologize. Kind of do some things, clean up around the house a little bit there. The office we're going to have it at. And I called home and said, drag the arena, do this, and I gave them a list. So they've worked for the farming man also and run a tractor. They got the graveyard shift, and they would run it from midnight through 6 in the morning. But we farm quite a bit of wheat also, so and have changed a little bit. The gentleman that ran that part of our operation had some major medical problems this year, and so we had to change up a little thing. But they've done that, and they're building fence right now. They doctor in the morning or check cattle, whatever they need to do, and then they've been building fence in the afternoon.
Do they come by it naturally? I mean, is it natural for them? Have they had any sort of yearning to go off and do something else?
Oh, I think they both will, and I want them to.
Oh, you do?
I think that's fine. I think that's good. Clay, probably after he gets out of TCU, will go somewhere. I think he's going to go to a feedlot job. He had interviewed with a company and didn't get the job, which is fine. And Robert probably will go work on another ranch. We've got several in mind that I think he would. He's got one in particular that he would like to go. He'd like to go work for Craig and Jody Haythorne.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if that works, if they'd hire him, then that would be a good thing for him.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you would have been different with a girl?
I think God knew. He does some awesome things. I think he knew I was going to have to raise boys by myself, and I don't know.
Yeah.
It would have been fun, I think. I would, but this is the way it was, so it's all right.
How do you think that life, or do you think it's just sort of listening to you talk about your grandmother and thinking about, women through history and ranching. Do you think it's really changed that much for women? I mean, are the jobs pretty much the same? The amount of responsibility?
I think probably things haven't changed very much at all. Mm-hmm. I think that it's just like our deal. I cook for everybody. I'm a good cook too, and it's kind of one of those things you just do what you have to do. Mm-hmm. And I think women have always been that way. Mm-hmm. You don't worry about if it needs done, you go do it. It's not to worry about, especially women that have been raised, I think the way my grandmother was and all that. You just go do it. You don't ask questions. You don't say, oh, I'm not doing that. And it didn't matter if it was a dirty job or a not job. And usually you got the ones that nobody else wanted to go do, and you just did it. So I don't think things have changed.
I think you're absolutely right. I think you're absolutely right. It's like that great. Did you ever know Connie Reeves?
Absolutely, very well.
Were you a Waldemar? You're a Waldemar? Wow.
I was, actually. I think that it was why I got to go there, I'm not really sure, because I did not want to go. I thought that was like sending me to prison.
I can't imagine you at Waldemar.
Well, that's what I said. I've never, but I did know Connie very, very well.
She was it.
Unbelievable. That must have been why I got to go to Waldemar, so I could meet Connie, because there was
Yeah.
I did. And
I could see you and Connie together easily.
We got along really good.
Yeah. Yeah. She was amazing. But, just to...
Now, see, that was all that other stuff, them trying to get me away from everything else I wanted to do.
Okay. Didn't work.
No, because I was pretty little when they shipped me off.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
And Waldemar is a pretty long...
It was
6 weeks.
Over 6 weeks when I went the first time.
Wow.
I did like it, though.
Yeah.
I met a lot of good friends that I've had for life there.
Yeah.
So it's all part of the plan.
Mm-hmm. I think the world could be divided up into two distinct groups of people, those who are fortunate enough to have known Connie Reeves and those who were not fortunate.
Well, I was one of the fortunate ones, and I count it as a blessing because I have so many super memories. And I was at the horse barn every time I could be there. Mm-hmm. I would sneak off and be down there. I mean, it was so... Anytime I could be around Connie, I was there. Yeah,
I think that this whole place is built on her statement, always saddle your own horse, and I think that's what women have always done and will always have to do.
She was remarkable.
So you're one of her brats.
Very much so.
When we inducted her, it was great fun because she just got up there. When we inducted her, Terry, she was 90 plus years old. And she just got up there, no notes, and just talked for 5 minutes, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house. And she said, I see all you little brats out there.
I can just hear her.
Yeah, you can.
I can.
You can, but just clear as a bell and just really, really wonderful.
Neat lady.
Yeah, really special. Hey, Terry, what are your tools? What are your tools? What are the things in your work that you rely on?
Well, I'm not sure how to answer that probably, but I would say saddles and bridles. immediately. I mean, and I have ones that fit different occasions, you know. So that would probably be the most important thing, is tools, I guess, even down to your boots and spurs, and I guess, and having comfortable boots and tools. Calculator.
Computer?
Yeah.
Are you is computer a tool for you now or not?
Yes, ma'am. In some respects,
Yeah.
Jana kind of fusses with me a lot because I am technology limited
Are you?
by choice.
Really?
I don't like to sit still long enough to learn something.
So you're not going to pull your BlackBerry out of your...
I don't have one. In fact, I have a really old phone, and she tried to get me one of those BlackBerry things, and I said, I don't want it. I like simplicity. Still have my black books. I mean, I put things on the computer, but I write everything down. And I don't type real well, which you all have some. I don't like to type, but I don't mind writing. So I don't put a lot of things on computer, and I still keep everything in a notebook and put it on the shelf, and it's got the year on it, and it's got the calendar and the year, and I put it up there, and I've done that all my life. So I've got a big, probably somebody ought to put them on computer one of these days because it would sure save a lot of space. But I don't know that I would do just fine without it, but they certainly come in handy a lot of times. I mean, I have a DTN, so I can see the markets, but I don't do anything on a cell phone. In fact, I don't really like them, but they free me up, and I don't have to sit in one spot and I go do something else, and I appreciate that fact.
Do you keep it on while you ride, while you're out working?
Yes.
You do?
I do. Unless it's a situation that it's going to be annoying, and then I'll turn it off. But I just have it vibrates. And then I have Doc Holliday come on and says, I have 2 guns, one for each of you. And everybody goes, who's talking? Who's talking?
That's great.
So it's great. I kind of get that, you know.
That's great.
It's my cell phone.
Do you all use, do you use 4-wheelers? Do you use? No?
No. There's not one on the ranch.
Really?
No. It's a bad word. No, we don't have any. Everything's done horseback.
That is amazing.
And we have trucks that we feed in. But no 4-wheelers. No.
It's pretty rare these days, isn't it?
Well, a lot of places. I think the bigger outfits are still, you'll find there are not very many. And so, you know, the days that are, there are opportunities to ride the 2-year-olds and the 3-year-olds and the older horses. And so we were talking, Eric Story and I were talking yesterday about limit grazing cows on wheat this winter, you know, where you turn them out for a day and then kick them off for 2 days. And he said, that's a little labor intensive. I said, nope, that's an opportunity to ride your 2- and 3-year-olds. Perfect opportunity. So you accomplish getting your horses broke as well as getting what you need done with the cattle. So it goes very much hand in hand.
Do you, I still remember it was, and I think we've had the opportunity to laugh about it since then, but I'll never forget the day that I called you and told you you were being inducted.
I'm almost embarrassed.
In the museum. It was my most unusual response when you basically said to me, "Who are you and what are you talking about?"
I didn't know.
It was so classic. It's like, because usually people start crying, you know, or just break out in tears or squeals of laughter. So
instead of this, well, I really didn't have any earthly idea why you were calling me.
or what the heck I was talking about. Did you? What is your definition of cowgirl?
I have not ever really thought about that. I'm not sharp enough to probably come up with anything just really brilliant.
Did you always think of yourself as a cowgirl? Do you think of yourself as a cowgirl?
Oh, I don't know that I even think of myself as a cowgirl. I don't know. I've not ever been very good at titles or lumping somebody into something. And, you know, cowgirl, okay, probably the first thing I would think of would be the rodeo cowgirls. What that you would think they're the trick riders and Tad Lucas, or, you know, I mean, that would be kind of, and then, you know, to think of the people that you don't know that really probably like Georgie Sicking. I mean, those people that have just been in the backside all their lives. And I think that probably the word cowgirl today might involve more about what you believe about things. You know, I think integrity, honesty, values, those kind of things, good work ethics, character, those kind of qualities, I think, would be the kind of things you think. But then you think of peas, you know, there probably were some that through the years, I mean, like the Doc Holliday's days or something, they may have been cowgirls and maybe didn't have some of the qualities that we were talking about. But I think today that would be, in my opinion, what you would think of when you said that word. I would hope.
Well, now this hasn't been so hard, has it?
That's over?
I think it's over.
Okay, you didn't have to get that part.
We'll start it out with that. It's over? Diana, questions?